ladies and gentlemen. What a beautiful morning. It's winter, but you can see the sun is shining. And we're going to be having an interview with the Mosadi. Dr. B.B. Pitt. And I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Kate Mefane. I am the optometrist at Focus Optometrist. And I'm self-employed, obviously. I've just pursued my master's in public health, and I am a PhD candidate at University of Limpopo. And obviously my qualification as an optometrist, I've got diagnostic privileges. And for now, actually, this is briefly what I can say. But obviously, the reason why we're here is because we're going to have a free talk. I can't say it's an interview.
Conversation.
A conversation.
Politician.
A formal conversation with my beloved Dr. BB. For now, actually, I'm just going to ask you, will you kindly introduce yourself? Because the reason why I'm saying you must introduce yourself is because I want you to describe yourself at the same time, so that whatever that will be conversing about, it will be at the disposal of what you have given us. Because like sometimes actually there is more that you are doing. You're a woman that is wearing a lot of hats.
No, according to you. No, we have one head on. So
Which is be nice.
Be nice. Okay.
So who's Bessy? Who's Dr. BB?
From primary,
yeah, I think actually if let's say maybe you can just cap from you see how you manage to obviously you are also an author, how you manage to introduce your book, your introduction in the book. I think just to give it a background so that at least we shouldn't just start from in the middle of nowhere and then start to shoot, because even myself, I don't know you from way back there, yes.
Yeah. Well, all the way. Do you think people want to know
You can just describe you the Batswadi Bahao, and then your background in terms of the Morales. I think that is also very important because just to connect it to the book that you wrote so that people can connect all the dots.
Okay. Msadi, thanks for inviting me. I thought it was a good thing for us to have this platform, because there is a lot of not just women, there's a lot of individuals, young people that are in a place. We need a lot of affirmation. We need to know that what we want, what we are dreaming of, is possible. So every time somebody else who is already doing it, who is affirming what you're already thinking about, so it's a nice platform, and we need to do more of this. More longer we start talking about personal development, personal effort, hard work, and making sure it's clear it's a good thing and it's everything. Because at some point it would look like you don't have to go to school, you don't have to work hard, just the connections and you're fine. But those things are not sustainable, they don't last. But if we commit to working on ourselves and then continuously work on ourselves, that is something that you have forever. No one can take that away from you. And then it's just a matter of you deciding how you're going to apply it to different things. So this is definitely something that is necessary, and I'm personally very proud of what you're doing. For you continuously working on yourself, going through your masters, to even go back after stress masters, to go back and already a PhD. And then there are a lot of people that are also more transitional. Do they go? Do they not go? They're already doing their PhDs. But when you see that somebody else is doing this, and they still look normal. Maybe I can also do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's the beautiful thing about it. So a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
ke belegetše Jenfese, Limpopo. My father ke wa ga Mampuru, and then my mother ke wa ga Mogale. So growing up, for the first 5 years of my life, ke goletše from my mother's side with my grandparents. And in that time, as small as we were accustomed to the idea entrepreneurship, because we were always, moving about the shops that my grandfather had. My grandfather is a pioneer entrepreneurship in Fesi, which I'm very humbled that I got to a place where I'm able to appreciate him like that.
Yes.
Because most of the time when you are born of, or you grow up around somebody who's successful, you get so used to it, you think it's normal.
Yes.
Until you grow up and realize that this is not normal, it doesn't come standard. It's a lot of personal effort, a lot of sacrifices that somebody had to go through when others were not willing to go through. So it's definitely something very humbling. I learned a little bit of gems there and there. So just being familiar with money and being comfortable with money, because even as you grow up, you're not overwhelmed with money. Like, money is money, and money must be available.
Yes.
But the thing about money is you have to work for money. So I'm grateful for that. And later moved to stay with my parents. Now, when my father started working after his qualification for his BCom degree, then the beauty about that was, being able to grow up with both parents that were present and who are still here up to today. It's a great privilege because everybody would love that, but no one chooses. Sometimes you grow up without one of the parents by choice, sometimes not by choice, from the parents themselves. But it's a huge privilege to have parents that are present and that are consciously present, because being physically there doesn't mean that you are present. So that played a huge role in my life in terms of me just being comfortable, being confident, always knowing what anytime if I'm worried about anything or stressing about anything, my father is a call away.
Yes.
It's still the same today. But obviously I've had to cut it short because I have to grow up at some point. I don't call him as much as I would then, because I'm blessed currently to be married to a man that we share a lot. We share a lot in common in terms of values, principles, careers, how we see life, how we see business work. So it just makes it so much easier. And along the way, I eventually studied for a medical degree, then later an MBA, which for me was a huge challenge going through that MBA, because I usually struggle with reading, which sounds funny. I really struggle with reading. So, so I usually listen. I listen and I remember. But
Okay.
obviously you can't just listen and and
Remember.
not make some effort. So I had to try to get myself to read. Yeah,
For your MBA.
for my MBA. Well, I survived it. If I can,
Yeah.
if
What
if
they
I'm here
normally
today,
say when you are doing masters, but you have to put it systematically and scientifically so that
yeah,
it can have a form.
yeah. So now you're a great student. You sound like a great student. I needed to be you in my in my life for my masters. So yeah, so at the time studying the MBA, I was already married. I was having 2 kids at the time. I was busy with my practice, my husband's practice, and I had other aspirations to do public speaking, mentoring students. So there was a lot that was happening. But it was a beautiful journey. All of that was worth it, and a lot of lessons learned. And then authored a book. I titled it Heaven on Earth through my grandfather's life.
So now, actually, sorry to interrupt you. We are talking about after you qualified for your MPH. Which year was it?
2013.
And then now we're talking.
The book was published 2015.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was part of the motivation for me to to finish my MBA, because I envisioned having the book with, 2 qualifications, both starting with an M. So it was it was a good motivation.
Okay.
I was like, I just want the 2 qualifications. They're just gonna look nice and fuller.
Yes.
Yeah. So eventually I did it, self-published the book, and yeah, then life went on, and today we're here.
And if I may ask, since while we were talking about the book, where did you get the aspiration? Was it maybe from external, in terms of maybe, um, your family members? Was it from inside, your own experience with what you went through?
Yeah,
Because, like, yeah.
No, it's very interesting. I never had any aspirations to write a book in the first place. So what happened 2010, when I started to, actually I just had my second baby at that time. Then when I went back to work, I started having so many ideas, a lot of things that I wanted to do. And it didn't make sense to me, it didn't make sense to my husband or everybody else, because we're like, why don't you settle down? I mean, you're already busy, you're already a doctor. What else? Why are you doing all the
Yes.
other things?
Yeah.
And I was also troubled, if I can put it like that. But why am I having so many ideas? And I was convicted to pursue almost all of them. So suddenly, it was a suddenly moment when I realized that, oh, okay, actually, my grandfather had something like this, because he was a serial entrepreneur, like a lot of businesses in his lifetime.
Like what?
Yeah, like
Serial entrepreneur.
serial entrepreneur. Fortunately, it's not a serial cheater, because normally I get serial associated serial cheater. So serial entrepreneur. And then it just affirmed me, because I realized that, okay, maybe what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, what I'm attracted to is not just out of the blue. It's probably a genetic thing.
Yes.
That I've got ideas and I've got the capacity to engage with my ideas. So I started noticing him for the first time, honestly, in 2010. I mean, by that time he was 90. And I saw him, literally saw him, as in like my eyes finally saw him in a different way.
Perspective.
Not just my grandfather. It affirmed how I was feeling, it affirmed what I wanted to do. And I started wanting to know more and more about him, because I realized he was the only thing for me at the time that could explain what is going on in my own mind. Then I committed to start getting closer to him. Then whatever memory that I had, I started writing it down. And literally from the time when I started noticing him, so to say, he passed on about a year later. Literally,
Wow.
I had only a year to get to know him, if I can put it that way, as a conscious person, as an adult, for the first time. And it was a short time, but I'm so grateful for it, because it has crafted the person that I have evolved to be, grown to be today, the courage that I have, the courage to live my dreams and work for my dreams, and be confident to go for what I want, as long as I'm willing to do the work, and know that God is in charge of the whole thing, as long as I do the work, because God does guarantee you that if you do the work and then you keep the faith, you'll get the fruits. And so I started studying him closely, and then his life brought the awakening of heaven on earth. Then the heaven on earth part came when I realized that, so actually all the promises that God promises in our lifetime as human beings, you can experience them in this very lifetime. Contrary to what people always tell us, you must die first, and then we are judgment day, judge labe go emetse kwa go swere foroko ka mo, and then ka mo sa teng ke leng e le ile a opela. So that is a very it's not even self-limiting, because some people put that narrative in our minds.
Yes.
And it has kept many of us captive. It's still keeping us
limiting.
Yes, it's a limiting belief. So it's still keeping many of us captive today, because you delay living your best life today in the best way possible, in a responsible way, waiting to be rewarded after death.
Yep.
So it affirmed the idea of, okay, maybe everything is happening right now. So this is something that one can control and choose and work on right now, because if he could do it, it means the opposite of you living your best life is hell on this very earth. Then for me, it was like, look, okay, I just have to keep learning from him. And then so I can craft the best life for me and experience what he experienced. And I stood on the word in the Bible that says that, I mean, you are blessed because the one that came before you are blessed.
Yes.
Then I just took that blessing and then put it on my shoulder, and then I just ran with it.
Okay. Yeah, I think actually there is this book by Stan like saying the power of now. I think a lot of us actually we take for granted the fact that actually we are here, sitting here. We shouldn't take for granted. From my experience that you must learn to enjoy the current moment now. Yes. It's not saying that we should be oblivious of what's going on around us or whatnot. It's not like maybe we're being ignorant or anything.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of sometimes actually it's like happiness is on the other side of the mountain.
Yeah.
And you are one of the ladies that I've noticed that every moment, especially when I'm with you, you make it to count. You make sure that actually this is us. There is no need to wait for us to be happy.
Yeah.
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 And if I were to ask you, let's talk about after you graduated as a GP. Obviously, by then, we're not going to include after you acquired your MBA. Like you're saying that there is a moment where actually you could grasp and say, now I've started to. It's like the veil was open for me to see my grandfather, not just as my grandfather, but in another,
light.
In another light. Obviously, post graduation, most of us, let me say, it's almost like it's a black culture. The reason why I'm saying black culture is because I don't have any experience with the white culture of how they do it after graduation and whatnot. You find that you feel like the world owes you. You just got the certificates and then now the ching must just come. And what advice can you give to the young graduate? It can be, for now let's just keep it to the medical field and the allied. What advice can you give to one? Because like you can have a paper, but then at the end of the day, it's hard work, like you were saying. It's dedication. It's the ability to continue to grow and whatnot. And both of us, we all know that papers actually it's money, and money is papers and whatnot. How can you advise the young, or maybe how did you manage to
continue working on myself?
Yes.
Well, of course, I must be honest to say that my background also set me apart in terms of it made it easier for me to know that yes, I had the degree, but I was naturally inclined again to open my own practice so that I can manage what I make, what I create. It came more naturally to me, if I can put it that way. And it's different for everyone, and it's not everybody who wants to be an entrepreneur. Other people are comfortable and they're inspired. I mean, working in a company and all of this. So it's just, I think the important thing is to kind of find what works for you. Don't compare yourself, but also don't ignore what you're inclined to. Because sometimes you're inclined to things because those that existed before you in your lineage had something like that. So especially if it's a good thing, you have to ride on it. If it was a bad thing, obviously you must just try to deal with it and get it out of the way. So the main thing about work, like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of misrepresentation about input and output.
Yes.
A lot of us are in the mentality of, I just want this, I want results now. There's no quick results, at least not proper results. Yes, you can do things quickly, but usually it doesn't last. So the main thing is working on yourself more than working on getting the money. Because if you get the money, but you are not okay, you're going to lose the money.
Yep.
But if you work on yourself, meaning even if the money were to disappear for some reason, you'll be able to regenerate it again because you're the same creator that created the money.
Yes.
So when you're willing to work on yourself, you're willing to learn, that's what makes all the difference. So a lot of us, we have a lot of arrogance and pride. We're not even willing to be taught. We're not willing to submit under any kind of leadership or guidance, because you assume just because of 1, 2, 3 you know everything. And silly enough, I mean, you haven't been lived enough to know everything. But the weakest link, the ignorance of thinking you know it all, when you haven't even done much. And you want results because you go to social media, you see a lot of people that haven't done anything with their lives, and then they are claiming to be living their best lives.
Yes.
But then what you don't know is when they're off camera and videos, are they really happy? Are they really living their best life? But we put ourselves under that pressure. I want to live like that. I want to have that. And you don't even know
How did she manage? What did she
yes,
lose
yes,
in order to attain
yes.
whatever that they
And
attained?
of course, it's not like everybody who is posting things as Jabon. The other people actually worked for the
Very
things
hard.
that they have. But obviously, that is a personal thing that the individual knows what they've done. So, we must be willing to be students,
Yes.
students of life, be willing to learn wherever you are. Don't have the arrogance or the pride. Ya gore wena, I want to go watch and see. Kana go, you don't have anything, you don't know anything. But already, I mean, the pride is glooming and overwhelming you to a point that you can't hear anything. You're not willing to adjust. You're not willing to learn. So I think the main thing we must just be willing to learn. If you notice, or okay, that person has what I wish I can have. If you notice, or that person is doing what I would like to do, rather learn. It's okay to learn, and don't feel bad that you want to learn. That's the only way, actually. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. My next question. If I were to look at the curriculum, especially us in the medical field, do you think actually we are receiving enough financial literacy? Because sometimes actually there is this I think actually we fail to understand that here is a medical doctor, or maybe here is an optometrist, and here is finance. You find that actually we are struggling to intermingle between the two. Do you feel like actually as graduates by then, did we receive enough financial literacy, if I were to put it like that?
Yeah. We didn't receive any financial literacy. There is no financial literacy in the medical field. The only literacy we get just making sure that everybody stays healthy. But then no one is going to tell you about money. And you're not even allowed to think about money. Like for medical field, it's a sin to think about money.
Yeah, it's like you're evil now when you're thinking money more than health, the health of people.
Yeah. But all the other fields, I realize that they feel okay with money. They're actually
Comfortable.
very affirmed to charge and know that if I'm making an effort, I need to get paid. But for us in the medical field, that is a taboo topic, actually. Then we learn along the way, and that's why we get knocked, because we know nothing about our finances. Everybody else knows we know nothing. And then we also want to claim like we know something just because you qualified as a doctor, as an optometrist. Like, no, gape ke na le qualification. But financial literacy is something else. And once, anywhere where there is money, which is everywhere, you need to have some information, some knowledge. And when you realize, or you don't have it, be willing to learn. So what I realized a lot of people in the field under G, we are not even willing to ask for help, because it's going to seem like you are weak up. People but are qualified, and kana go you're not coping, and you're also scared to say I'm not coping.
To look for help.
To look for help. So you'll rather just see how it goes. You'll try to sort yourself out, and then until you collapse.
Actually, you just want to come out with the trophy without any help from your surrounding environment, and success is normally shared. That's what I always believe.
Yeah, that type of thinking is for someone who knows what success is. But as long as you're still competitive, you want to shine alone, you want to claim like you know everything, you're still far from maturity. Because pure success is you understanding that, okay, I master this, but I need to get help here. I need to delegate this one to do this for me. I need to get assistance on this. So you understand that, I mean, to get results, you need a holistic, or at least a team to work with you to actually get the success. Mara go sa le ntho le gore ke nyaka gore mphale re kitime even na pele, you are still far from anything close to leadership. at least personal leadership. You can have the position at work, but most likely you are not coping in your personal capacity.
Okay. If I may ask, why MBA of all the masters? Okay, let me elaborate with myself. The reason why I did my
Your
masters in
master's
public health,
Mhm.
I think what I have noticed about us is that we lack in terms of, obviously, as Black people, we're coming from a background where we still have to do a lot of awareness. We can talk mental health. People, they still don't know how the system works in terms of health. And it's almost as though nobody is willing, or to offer. Yes, the government is there, but obviously, if I were to put government and private, the private sector is the one that is doing most of the work, and most of the time, actually, it looks like it's not. But if you can check how, if let's say maybe I were to ask you to go and see an optometrist today, and then you go to public, obviously it will take time. But if you come to my practice, obviously things will get better. What I wanted to ask is that why MBA of all the masters? What gap did you notice?
My father said I must do it. That's the truth. I wasn't planning to go back to school. I don't want to lie. So I don't want to sound like some intellectual, like, I was sitting and I strategized and I'm like, MBA is the thing. No, it doesn't like that at all.
Yeah, you don't want to make it sound like it's a rocket science.
No, or like a genius somewhere. No, I'm not a genius. Because even for my medical degree, my father said you're going to study medicine. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I didn't even know what I wanted to study after high school. So he's like, you are doing medicine. And then he said to my other sister, you're going to do law, you accounting, you engineering. It's like, so it's like his team. So his puppets. But I mean, if you have your own kids, you must create your own team. So that's what he did. And I was like, oh, okay. Then I studied medicine until I liked it. And now I love it. And so when it came to MBA, the same thing. Now I was relaxed. Okay, go relax. I'm going to enjoy it.
I just want to be a Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. Yeah, so it's like, I think you should do an MBA now. I was like, no. And then at the time, I was single. I was like, maybe I should consider it. Maybe I might find a husband in the MBA class. Because at least I'm gonna get a match. Because I always knew that I wanted a man who is my match or slightly more developed than me. Because I don't want to be, justify myself for coaching another woman's baby. By that time, when I have to also deal with myself, so I knew that for me, with a medical degree, the least, just being honest, for me, is another doctor. A lawyer, an engineer. that was a minimum requirement for me, because we feel bad to say, when you want a certain standard, you should have standards.
Yes.
I mean, if you're developing yourself, you should get your match. So this thing, hey, no, whatever, no, it's a joke. If you're working on yourself, get somebody who's also working on themselves. Because if you compromise, you're both going to suffer. Now he's going to suffer because he has to tolerate you and explain to everybody why he's not developed and you are developed. And then you're going to suffer because you must always be trying to make him feel comfortable why he hasn't developed himself.
And you also have to limit yourself so that you can accommodate his ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, because I mean, by the time you're doing all of that, when are you going to do real stuff? Just trying to accommodate each other. You bounce there, you come back. And so for me, that was a standard. So I thought, okay, maybe I should consider doing this MBA because I'm going to get people that are already working on themselves.
Yes.
But then I didn't do it at the time. But then once I started thinking deeply about it, because one of the reasons my father said you should do an MBA is that, I mean, you can't be talking about blood all the time. Blood, patients, the eye, the muscles. And I'm like, that's true though. And already I was in private practice, so I thought actually it's actually a good thing for me to develop myself, because I knew again that I didn't want to go back and do a master's in medicine. I also knew that. For me, it wasn't an option as much as for somebody else it is. But for me, it was about money. I believe in money.
Which is
So
good because a lot
yeah,
of people, they're looking for money, but the voice of us saying I want money, it's almost as though it's a taboo.
yeah,
And if you look around, actually everything is about money.
yeah.
If we were to be very much honest.
No, everybody knows that it's about money.
Yes.
But then people will engage you like, orata chelete, whatever, whatever. But the same person, wata, tomorrow evening, at chelete.
How does that work?
So, like, you should be okay with money. You should be okay with working for money.
Yes.
You should work for money and understand what is the process. Charity doesn't just pop. You have to give value for you to get value in return. Because Jesus Christ, what he said, if you want to be great in the world, serve many. But people are not willing to serve. We just want the money and what money brings, but we are not willing to serve. We are not willing to work on ourselves. So that's the biggest, weakest link, literally. Yeah.
Okay. Since actually we're touching on the fact that actually you were looking for somebody who's your match, and I think actually what I've also noticed is that a lot of ladies, we are caught in a position where, okay, I'm also married, I've got kids and whatnot. Sometimes actually it's almost as though it's difficult to have a husband if, let's say, maybe you are continue to grow yourself, or maybe to groom yourself to be a better person and to be okay with what you really want. Like maybe in terms of, not necessarily a marriage setup, but in terms of partners, in terms of a male and a female, or whatever partnership that there is. From the female point of view, how do you think, I know it's going to be tough because like you'll have to answer it in general. What do you think would be the best possible solution? I know it might not be the exact one, because I've noticed that most women actually, who are up there, they're struggling at home in terms of like, now there is gender-based violence. When you check, actually this person is a GP, this person is a lawyer. And I read this book by okay, I'll remember the lady. She described Vanessa Govender. She wrote a book about how she was obviously she was part of the gender-based violence, but the lady actually used to sit on the TV almost every day, and we didn't even see it coming. It's powerful ladies like that, but like they struggle when they are at home, and then you don't understand if they can voice out everything in public, what's happening at the back. How can we, I don't know, try to mend this in a way, especially as ladies?
Yeah, I think it's for basically both men and women. So when it comes to that intimacy, it's not as complicated as we want to make it. So the important thing about getting into any relationship, you must know yourself first. You must have your own standards. You must have your own list, if there's anything like a list. But you must know what will work for you. But you'll only really know what will work for you if you've kind of worked on yourself. But obviously when you're young, you haven't worked on all of you. But for where you are, the personal effort, or at least the simplest way, is if you know that you're an honest person, look for an honest person. If you know you're a liar, look for a liar. That's what you deserve. So you should want what you are. So most people want...
We attract who we are.
Yeah. And sometimes even before that, we have a fantasy of you don't have to do anything about yourself, but you want the best for yourself. Where are you going to get that? Life doesn't work like that. So you should want what you are. That's the best thing. And that comes with the consciousness though. So you have to be conscious, because sometimes we usually go into relationships casually, just feel attracted, and that attraction is not going to do anything. It's not going to be able to sustain that relationship. So the first thing is always to say, be conscious of yourself, reflect on yourself, work on yourself, know what is it for you, what is important for you, and what type of person do you need in your life to be able to live that type of life that you're hoping for. So most of the time, re no theletša the feelings for the teenagers. Only teenager ya kwa gala gore, I mean the hormones are raving and they're driving you up the wall. But at some point, you have to go beyond what you're feeling and apply logic. What do you want? and what type of partner do you need for you to be able to get to that. So now if you go in and you haven't engaged yourself, and there's also this pressure, no, I mean, it doesn't mean if you're you know, you've worked on yourself, you've done this and that, don't be too uptight, man. Relax.
Yeah.
Because loosen up, man. Yeah, so once you do that, God disappears, Lena, because he can't be part of that equation. So with every relationship, it's always, we're not saying is an easy thing, but again, most of the things are complicated because we complicate them.
Yep.
Things are supposed to be simple in actual fact.
Yes.
So you go into a relationship already from the beginning. Nothing will happen in the future that you didn't detect from the beginning. But when we see those red flags, those signals, we ignore them at the time because you are not ready to deal with it then. Perfect. Definitely, perfect, perfect. But there are some things that you're supposed to have checked on your list to say, Ayona,
I will not
I fit more because this one evaluator 1, 2, 3. So basically, you should be okay with yourself and know what will work for you and choose a partner like that. Even if there's a delay in terms of you getting that person, you'll rather delay a little bit. But if you go into a relationship where things are not okay and you're like, no, but we'll just see others, look, and people will actually even tell you that, look, I mean, I got that. Like, look,
as you continue to study,
so
you are buying a nice car. How are they going to propose you? Because men are on the street.
Yes. So when you want to adopt that,
yeah,
you know, we are for adoption, well. So we can't. So we can't. It's not an adoption agency.
You know.
So can tell her it's good that you're laughing, guys. Can tell her it has to be clear. You're not an adoption agency. You are looking for your match. You are looking for your partner. But for you to even get to that, what have you thought about this thing?
And another thing that I've noticed about people, they compromise for those things. At the end of the day, you live with yourself for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And you are the only person who knows yourself. So the least you can do, just do yourself favor and prioritize yourself.
But that is hard. That is hard. You are talking like that because you already went through a master's. Remember, by the time you get to a master's degree, it means you've gone through the process of just reflecting on yourself and making decisions and realizing that, okay, I don't have time for 1, 2, 3 anymore if I want to make it through this. So already you master prioritizing already. So, but we're not also saying that you need a master's for you to be able to make a sober decision.
Reading
but
books.
Yeah, you read books, talk to the people that are living the life that you like.
Associating.
Yes, associate with the type of people that you think you would want something from what they are doing. Because you just do things in a certain way and expect things to turn out in a different way. It's not going to happen. So most people go in the relationships that, because our instincts tell us all the time. You knew it was not okay from the start, but you promised to yourself that you're going to make this thing work. And then by the time we're on the other side, things are not working. It's never sudden. You knew from the start. But then you kept tolerating, hope it's going to get better. And already on a pressure, or and already so you basically get into a place where you understand that this is going to be your life. You have to make decisions that will work, that you'll be able to account to. So are you going to be able to talk to this person? Because if it's a partner, because by the time you get to marriage, you must understand you're getting into a partnership. But if you get into this type of union with somebody who is your student or who is your adoptee, it's not going to work because the ground is not equal. So the whole time you'll just be dealing with primary primary issues when you're already in tertiary. But you are dealing with primary issues, even worse crèche or even worse toddler issues, still changing the pampers. Just to make this thing work, it's going to drain you, and there's not going to be progress in that relationship because you're not on the same page. But when you get your match, and there's a match for all of us, when you get your match, that's when you start building. And until you find your match, so resuscitation all the way.
Okay, and then if I may ask, how did you manage to keep relevant? If with David Buck, they call it the blue ocean strategy. Moving with being innovative at all the time. How do you keep relevant in a sense, whether in the line of business or maybe in a social?
Do you believe I'm relevant?
I think you are. If you were irrelevant, I think actually you wouldn't be where you are currently, and I think you'll be one notch less.
Yeah.
And whatever that, obviously I knew you from 2009.
Yeah.
And by that time, actually, you were in another level. But then now the Bessie that I knew then is not the Bessie that I see now.
Yeah.
Because I can see even now socially how we are. Because by that time, remember, I've noticed that between the age of 20 and 30, a lot of us are not aware. We are making the most critical decisions. We are having our kids, we are finding our partners, we are starting our business. There is so much that is happening in there. And then after 30, actually, you are living according to the decisions that you have made. But then some actually, when after making those decisions, you find that actually those decisions they're not really relevant. I found the wrong partner, I chose the wrong, and then you've got kids, and then no, actually I didn't want to have, it's just one of those turmoil.
So that's basically you're saying that's the time when you see the results of your choices
that you made. And most of us, I think I've noticed that between the age of 20 and 30, we make such critical decisions and we're not even aware, and we take it for granted. And this is the time where actually your cup is not yet full, and then now actually some they complicate it from there.
I think the one line that I remember from MBA is adapt or die. That's the one thing that I took at least from my MBA. You adapt or die. And that's why in the Bible we're talking about, the Bible talks about renewal of the mind every single day. Because a human being by nature is a dynamic being. But the soul, the spirit that exists is not dynamic, it is what it is. But the bodies that we live in, they go through so many dynamics all the time. And the bodies that we live in knows fear. The bodies that we live in grief. So all those things are the limiting dynamics that we all go through. And the only way for you to stay relevant or to stay afloat is you must be able to, when your own body wants to limit you out of fear, out of grieving for things that you're supposed to be accepting and moving on, is to rise above that. And that's what makes you relevant. That's how you adapt. And getting in any situation and understanding that, okay, what is happening now, what is needed now, then you adjust.
Actually, I want to quote you in your book. There is a part where actually you were explaining of how after your grandfather passed away, like you're saying that you only knew him like consciously
for about a year.
And for about a year. There is a part where actually you were saying that, I don't know if less of you can remember it very well. You were saying that actually you could feel that actually this thing, it was sort of hating you, but at the same time you had to be very careful of those feelings. And when you're reading books like Wost and Told, they'll tell you, right, sometimes actually it's important for us to watch and look at our feeling. There's nothing wrong with feeling angry, but then the main aim is that you must learn to look at those feelings. So how do you keep up, especially with your emotions and the current environment that you're already in, or the level that you're already in?
I think, like with everything, is you just have to get to a place where you understand that your focus, your choices, your environment, all of them play a role in your life. And understand that you are responsible for how you're feeling, how you're thinking, and whatever that you're thinking or feeling or entertaining is going to determine whatever that happens to you. So just the consciousness, be conscious of how you're feeling. Once you're aware that the feelings that you're feeling are not feeding what you want out of life, you have to allow yourself to let them go. But it's important, like you're saying, acknowledge how you feel. It's okay. I mean, you're living in a fearful body, which is the ego, which is very egoistic. It depends on the ego. The ego itself, it is always trying to protect you. So it thinks it's trying to protect you. So it makes sure that you do nothing that will get you into trouble. If it means you compete, you compete. If it means you lie, you must lie, just to
Just to
survive.
protect you, yeah.
But that is not real protection, because real protection is when you choose to live your life in a state of consciousness, in a state of love, because there's no fear there. Then you allow yourself to, you don't become paranoid of people and things. You don't always worry about what can go wrong. You're always thinking, what can I create? How can I improve this? How can I feel better? How can I have more joy?
But you know, before, actually, I just wanted to drop something. Obviously, I did this life coaching course.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
And one of the things actually that we were taught is that there was a time actually you just close your eyes, and then they'll put you in a very comfortable space, and then, do you love yourself? Yes. Why do you love yourself? I love myself because I'm myself. And then it was easy.
Yeah.
And then the second time actually they put you in a very uncomfortable space.
Yeah.
You fear something? Yes. Why do you fear? Because I'm protecting myself. Everything actually is going to come back to the fact that you love yourself. So sometimes people, when they talk about fear and all of this, they associate it with somebody that is already far away from who you are.
Yeah.
But the matter of fact that what they were trying to teach us is that you are whole as a person. You are one. So they were trying to teach us the ability of you trying to, manage what you are feeling and acknowledge the fact that actually for me to be the whole person.
Yeah.
That is when Mudimu, even when Arabopa, Psalm over Psalm 139, dirile kore how dira fetjamula which call fast and then fetjamula to show a century long local 1 2 3 ofitla mo ofeleji with everything. All that you have to do is to continue to believe, because like everybody was built with a certain faith of some sort. So it's just to acknowledge what you were saying when you talk about the fact that actually you are one. And a lot of people, they always say, when you are feeling fearful, it means they associate it with weakness.
And evil.
And evil at the same time.
No, that is correct. What we're talking about now is actually such a critical thing, because I think we don't get taught the consciousness of understanding our being. And that's why most of us who live in fear, we're always trying to run away from the devil. And we end up thinking some people are part of the devil. But it's because we're engulfed in so much fear. We're never empowered with so much love that we know more love than fear. And then once you exist in fear, I mean, it just takes over your life. You no longer have freedom, because you're always worried about gore motho o tlo ntšhelela something ka mo, motho o nyaka go mpolaya, motho o nyaka go ntšhela. So you're just paranoid the whole
always thinking about
time.
the best intention of everyone.
So when you live in fear, your ego is in charge of your being. And once your ego is in charge, you must know the ego's job is to make sure that you don't die physically. So it will make sure that it protects you. O tlo ya dingakeng, o tlo ya ba porofeteng, ba go fe protection. O sa re o kry protection plus ngaka tša metšetše ba na le difounu ba bangwe, or I mean they just call you, no, we need to upgrade your protection jwale. So you'll never know rest.
You're due for your renewal.
Yeah. Exactly. You're
due for an upgrade.
So you'll never know rest, because you have outsourced your rest. You have outsourced your peace. You've outsourced your autonomy. And that person who has your autonomy of peace, you experiencing joy, they can always just dial you up and say, look, we just got a new package on Joel. It has your name on it. Because you have allowed them by default, by just you not going or allowing the spirit, your spirit being to take over.
Sometimes actually it can also be the social norms and values of how culturally we were brought about to believe that actually, this is how it's supposed to be done.
And you need that extra protection. Don't just look at that person doing 1 2 3. They are getting the best protection. So it definitely has to do with all the way from our childhood and what we experience in different forms. And You grow up with that. Sometimes even if you are not actively taught that, but for the mere fact that you didn't receive enough love, if I can put it that way, you are vulnerable then.
You always feel like there is a lack.
Yeah, and somehow
it's
people,
enough.
yes, people who are in that space, they can sense people that are not affirmed. And then they offer you. I mean, if you know how many professionals that you'd think somebody's educated, they'll apply logic, but they're still at the mercy of people that even have not even worked on themselves, but they're giving them programs to live by. Then you ask yourself, education maybe I name whole.
What is the point?
What is the point? Because if somebody who has not done much effort with their lives can come and have such authority in your life, dictate how you must live, where you must go, who you must stay with, what you must eat, what you must not eat. What's the point? Yeah.
Okay. And I think actually our churches, you can see instead of somebody can sit down and work on themselves, they'd rather,
Yeah.
Instead of me doing my work,
Your internal work.
My internal work, I'd rather hand it over to you, and then when you'll take it from there.
Yeah, remember the reason, sorry to say, but the reason it's like that is, remember, when you have allowed your physical self or your ego to be in charge, that's what will have to happen. You'll have to outsource it, because the ego is also lazy. It doesn't want to do anything hard. That's why when people talk about overcoming, the Bible talks about overcoming the self, and people will talk about, even casual, we talk about overcoming yourself, the physicalness, they'll say conquer the day and all of that. It just means that you have to overcome the limitedness of your physicalness for your spirit being to rise and overrule the fear of the ego. But when you don't do that, when you're not willing to work on the things that make you uncomfortable, you'll always have to outsource the direction. Yeah.
No, let's talk about the pandemic, COVID-19.
Yeah.
How has it changed your life? How has it affected you?
I think COVID affected everybody in a similar way, because what COVID did is it just said to everybody, stop what you're used to doing, stop what you're used to doing, and be still. Spend time with family. And everybody was so scared that you just reprioritize things in your minds. I mean, there were people that they were so used to every Friday we work car washing but when you
remember gatherings,
those social gatherings,
we're getting way out of hand also at the same time.
Yes. So what COVID said is no more car wash, no more drinking with the boys and girls, stay home or you die. So now the ego, remember, doesn't want you to die. It complied, and you realize that I'd rather not go to the car wash, let me stay home and survive. So for those that were able to embrace that and appreciate what it has done for us as individuals and family, it was a beautiful time, because it suddenly forced you or allowed you to spend time with family, to be aware of yourself. That fear alone, if you channeled it well, it allowed you to work on yourself and overcome the worst fear for any human being, which is death. And if you can overcome that worst fear, which is death, most of the things that people will threaten you with, or that your mind will normally tell you, will make you fearful of, you overcome. But then again, there were some of us who experienced real death, so meaning you actually lost somebody.
Yes.
So obviously that was said, and it has affected everybody in a painful way, because losing somebody is always a heavy thing to experience. And at the same time, it forced all of us to appreciate every minute. Every minute, which is something that you can't do under general, because prior to COVID, everybody was just busy, like didn't have time for anything, for anyone, like nothing. So for those that were able to ride on the wave, they built better relationships. They became better people through this. And those that were not able to channel it, they became even more scared, more fearful, more angry, which is all the negative energies or traits that come with the fearfulness. So I think everybody was directly affected, if not infected.
Infected, affected financially,
Yes.
social capital.
Yes.
The lives of people, actually, they had to be apart,
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you notice, as much as lives were apart, but families were together.
Yes. Actually, it's almost as though as the world, we had to know one another intimately. So
That's the thing.
and that was the toughest thing. I remember in our case, actually, obviously, we're not working for almost 2 months. Financially, it has some financial
Yes.
implication. We had to stay as a family, every
And
day,
pray together.
pray
Pray
together,
eat together.
and you can't even leave the house. You're
Yeah.
not even allowed,
Yeah.
and you had to stay in that. And one of the things I wanted to thank God, because by that time my master's actually was based on the very same, the pandemics and whatnot.
A
So
blessing in disguise
yeah.
for you.
so it was very relatable at the same time. Okay, let's talk about success and succession.
Serious things, usually.
Yep. Can we just dip ourselves in there? Success and succession, what you are building currently, obviously, success without succession is a failure. So how can you how can you describe succession from success? Meaning that you obviously, should I say, building an empire, if I were to put it like that, or maybe handing over the baton.
Yeah.
In relay, actually, as you run, it was your grandfather, he gave it to your mom gave it to you. I'm just,
Yeah.
success and succession.
Yeah. Well, talking about that, I must just say I didn't get any monetary value directly from my grandfather
You had
because
to
of
observe.
yeah. So I think the greatest gift for me was his life, because I realized that that is the greatest legacy, the person I can become, because I can create and recreate and do better. Because I think we also have to add the black element, because remember, for most of us as black people, having success and literally being able to transfer it is not a norm. Maybe it's going to start now because we've just recently had our democracies and more of us are educated, more and more of us are succeeding. But for most of us, when we consider the past, it's not a norm that you're handing over financial legacy. So it's kind of a new thing for most. But for my grandfather, I should give it to him that, I mean, even by the time he died, he still left enough. It's just that, sometimes there are dynamics in the family that have to be dealt with. And I kind of, I respect that. But what I committed to do is I want my life to represent his life. And I want my life to be better than his life, because his life was already better. So that's the legacy that I took, and that's my gift. And I write on it every time. So meaning every time I do something, it's not new for me. I'm writing on my grandfather's legacy. I said, my grandfather already did this. So naturally, it's not a first time for me. I've already lived through this. Through
His
him.
standards actually already
They've
here.
set
You
my
need to,
yes.
up your notch.
They've already set a standard for me, and they allow me then to be bold enough and brave enough to want bigger, better, not to be scared to dream. Because I mean, if already what I'm doing now he's done then I should be able to do better. So it also allowed me to learn where are the gaps that I need to be mitigating now, so that I need to make sure that our efforts are actually passed on properly. All the efforts that we're making now should be well structured and transferable. So part of that obviously is to make sure that you empower your own kids. You empower them from when they are small. They must know work. They must be accustomed with work, because when you
Be
don't,
responsible.
yes, when you don't, when you are privileged as a parent and don't allow your kids to work, they're going to mess up everything you've ever worked for.
They lose the value
They
of
don't,
what you've
no,
worked
they
so
don't
hard
know.
for.
They don't know the value. They don't know what you're talking about, because you have given them the impression that this is life and this is how it's supposed to be, and it just comes like that. But when you're thinking legacies, you're talking succession, you should be grooming. That's why in kingdoms they groom the king and the queen from birth.
Yes.
Because they understand that this person must take over. So is that consciousness of always engaging your kids, because they're the best bestowers of your work.
Even
But
genetically.
yes.
Yeah.
So now if you don't empower them, they are going to be your downfall, basically. So the biggest part is, as you're working on yourself, as you're improving on yourself, make sure that your kids are also being made capable to be able to handle work, because the whole thing is about work ethic.
Ish.
If there's no work ethic, forget it. Everything is going down the drain.
Yeah.
But if you can make them, rather than giving them, I mean, they can always, take what you've given to them and make it better, because you've allowed them to be pushed, to be pressed. So most of us now want our kids, to live the lavish life. You want your friends and your colleagues to know that your kids are living a lavish life because you think it's actually an achievement, which is sad when you don't understand that the biggest achievement is actually to put order and discipline in your child.
Yes.
So that they can take over and carry on and even just be capable in their own capacities as adults. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe one last thing. Obviously, you touch on something that is also very important. I wanted to include it.
Yeah.
Let me take myself as an example. Obviously, I grew up in an environment where it's a village. I used to walk to school. I was in a, rural format of the
Yeah.
Maleji area,
Yeah.
And I look at my kids now. They are very privileged. They've got their own driver, their English is better than mine.
Eish.
And,
So
and now I have to be a linkage between my mother,
Yeah.
who raised me,
One generation to the
one generation
to
to
the
the other.
Yeah.
And sometimes actually when you look at our kids, they're not as tough as who we are currently.
Yeah.
Like you can see how kids now, they are very suicidal. One mistake, actually they become depressed, and they've got so much information that they are accessing. Unlike us, actually, we had little information and we had to toe the line every now and then.
Yeah.
What is your advice for the era of us parents who are, say, like you were saying that then there was no norm of success and succession, and obviously you had to wake up in the morning and do your chores. Everything was just about the chores. But if you check us right now, we spend most of the time with our kids. We tell our children that we love them. We must make sure that we check on them every now and then. The life that they are living, Mututamaya 2 kilometers, there has to be somebody to transport them and whatnot. Whether you are traveling close to 20 kilometers, but you made it this far.
Yeah.
But the very same kids who are more privileged, I feel like, I don't know, they are fragile, if I were to put it like that. So what can you say about us, the middle era parents?
Yeah. Yeah. You're touching on a very critical issue, which is a global problem, where there's intergenerational problems that we're dealing with now, where there's somebody has to be the bridge between that one and this one. But what remains the same is God has put guidelines on how to raise kids, with money or without money. So now, for the average person who grew up poor and who's suddenly doing well now, they think that love is making sure that these kids never experiences what they experienced. And they don't realize that as much as the poverty that they existed in, it was because poverty on its own is also not a good thing. The extremism of poverty also, has elements of trauma. But again, it does help to develop your character, because you overcome, your body saying, no, I don't feel like, I don't want to, I don't. Just you being able to walk that 20 kilometers, it does something for you. That's what exercise does.
Actually, it grooms you.
Yes. I mean, no one actually just want to exercise. It's actually difficult to exercise. But you have to apply logic and say, I have to exercise and I'm going to exercise. So that's where you overrule your ego. And you as a spirit being takes charge of your circumstances. So the connection between science and God is a thing that more and more science is starting to say, oh yeah, they think they agree with God, like as if God needed approval from science. But the reason God says, raise kids in my ways so that when they are older they will not depart from them, is because he knows why he says that he created people. But then when we change the structure, the basic structure of how a child is supposed to develop, and sometimes we intentionally create situations where you just have a baby and the father is not there, is not interested, and you still give him a baby. sometimes it's not intentional, but you find yourself in a situation where, of course, the father is not there. Then you have to kind of try to see what you can do with the situation. But ideally, every child needs a mother and a father who are consciously present, and the mother more than the father, because the father must be making sure provision and protection is happening. But the mother, the nurturer, who is supposed to be present and who is supposed to be affirmed as a mother, as a woman, as a wife, so that she can take care of the household, which is also not fashionable now, because most of us as women were so misled, thinking that being there for kids is a weakness. Being there for your husband is a weakness. But again, we cannot account for the dysfunction that is happening in the families. We cannot account for the dysfunction that is happening with the kids. But you're apparently empowered. So back to basics is that every child, physically so, there is a part in their brain that only develops by presence of parents.
They need to hear both voices.
Yes, they need to hear both voices. And part of the voice, it has to be a balanced voice, a yes and a no. Work and rest. So if that is not happening and you just want your child to have a bliss and they mustn't work hard, they mustn't do anything, unfortunately that part of the brain is not developed.
Yes.
That part of the brain is responsible for the reward. It's a reward system. That when the child does X, they know they're going to get this. But now when that part of the brain is not developed, when the child grows older, then they start getting the reward or the validation externally because it was not developed internally. And the only way it's developed internally is by structure, order, discipline, which now parents are like, oh, what's going to oh, okay. But then what you fail to realize is that it's going to cost you. That's why God says, basically, if you don't raise your kids well, they're going to be your pain in your future.
Exactly.
You're going to suffer from the very kid that you refused or you failed to discipline, and allow them to work and allow them to earn things. Because by the time they are older, that reward system in their brains is not developed. Then now what do? They have to find it externally. How do they find it externally? Then there's addictive problems. Because they need to be validated. But they were not validated as when they do something like, oh, I'm proud of you. When they make a mistake, like, no, stop it, don't do it again. When they are loved, say, oh, we love you. So that balance must happen all the time. So most of us in this transitional state and as an intergenerational, parents now, we're missing that, and we're thinking it's actually success that your kids are living the life that you never lived. It's the worst thing that is happening right now as we speak. In the name of we are succeeding. In the name of we're also winning. But God's principles don't change. And I'm yet to see somebody who challenges the structure of God and is living a peaceful life. And they're having the bliss in their life, in their own personal capacities. Because what you show people and what you're experiencing when you're alone, there's a difference. There's a total difference, Yeah.
Okay.
In closing.
If I were to touch on mental health, as we were talking about our children being so fragile, this will be the last one. You see celebrities now who are flying high, the flamboyant, but then one minute you hear that actually so and so has committed suicide. And sometimes actually if we were to talk about it maybe from a perspective of saying what are the simplest signs that we can start to identify, because like now actually we are facing new dynamics. People actually, they want to be validated on their social media, they want to be seen out there, but when you try to check, actually there is no cushion at the back to hold those emotions or maybe to receive them.
I guess we have to keep in context that celebrities are human beings. It's just that their job forces them to be out there. So their lives are more publicized than somebody who is not in the media space. But they face the same dynamics. It's just that also because of the job, they have to portray a certain picture.
And
because
a certain
of the
image.
Yes, because of the job. But a celebrity was once a child like anybody else. So whatever dynamics that happened in their lives, they show up in the future. So for everyone who is thinking of committing suicide, who commits suicide, there's always issues that happened in their childhood.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't happen overnight, and most of the problems that we experience in our adulthood is childhood problems resurfacing in our adulthood. So you're asking, how do you identify or see? Sometimes it's not easy because you don't always spend time with somebody all the time, but it's more like, how can somebody identify themselves that maybe they're very depressed or they're very suicidal? So there'll usually be signs of addictive behaviors. So every time you feel in a certain way, you have to do something or drink something or smoke something to soothe you, because you need the consolation, because you cannot generate it internally. You don't, sometimes it's also because you don't have the support structures, to affirm you. But the biggest one is you cannot generate the soothing or the consolation internally. Because that was never structured for you. And even when you grew up, you were never able to get to that. So there's usually a lot of addictive tendencies, and people that are extreme, very happy and very sad, like extremism. So sad, withdrawing, avoiding interacting with people. But remember, others have to interact with other people because it's their job. But behind the scenes, they totally withdraw. They don't feel happy. They're not looking forward to the future. They don't see why they should get into the future. They don't see the point of even being in the present. So those are some of the quick signs and symptoms that one can see that, okay,
maybe I'm interest on
you just lose interest on things that are supposed to be basic and natural. You just lose interest. But the biggest killer is that you just don't see the value from within. It's something that you experience by yourself. You don't need somebody to diagnose it. You know when you are by yourself that you just have a lot of hopelessness. And every time you go through that, you always have to do something to soothe that, to make you forget. But then remember, because it's not internally created, you always have to be taking it from outside. And then once it wears off, you have to refill it. You refill it. But at the end of the day, the greatest thing is, which can happen for anyone at any time, you start becoming conscious and you work on yourself. You acknowledge the truth of how you grew up, things that challenged you, things that hurt you. Most of the time we are aware of what hurt us when we were younger, or what we wished for, or what we wished didn't happen to us. So if you can be conscious of those challenges, those pains, and work on them, that's when things start to change. And then you ask your creator to say, show me, tell me, who am I? Why am I here? Because he's got the answer for you. When you get the answer from the right person, it makes all the difference. So now, because of that, people are being misled, and people are going to churches, to all different people, to try to get the answers, and unfortunately they find the wrong people who don't tell them the truth about who they are. Then from there, that person wants to manage you, want to control you, but you'll never know the freedom and the peace that comes with going back to the originator. My best advice is, try to find God for yourself. Ask him to reveal himself to you. When
you talk about God, if I were to interrupt you there, the book of Ecclesiastes, there is a part where Solomon is just describing that life is useless. But for those there is those that will just take those verses as they are and then run with it. And as you go down, when you're reading the whole of it, it's trying to explain to you that life is to God. Life is a gift from God. And for you actually to continue to live your life, you need somebody that will continually, the person who knows you better. Even if you are living with yourself 24/7, but there is somebody who knows, but who created you, like she's saying, in your mother's womb. I knew there was a time when you were in your own mother's womb, you didn't even recognize yourself, you didn't even know your worth or anything. But God, actually, she's defining you from there. So most of the time, I think actually that's why maybe we are too lazy to sit down and just give to ourselves time and read, and sit down and read. And it becomes, that's why when you're reading the book of John, it's also say, in the beginning it was the word was with God. The very same word, because when God is saying, I am who I am, that I am, it's also you. It's also part of me. I'm also part of that I am. So I think actually, as you are elaborating, it really makes sense. And I think actually, most of the things that we are trying to elaborate is the fact that one need to work on themselves. you owe it to yourself to work on yourself. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's it. It's a wrap.
that's a wrap.